What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mika Says Sukas. And of course, as always, I'm your humble host, Niko House. We are live right now on both YouTube and Rockfin. And I'm here with you today with a very special guest returning to the show once again to drop some knowledge on us is Terry Bain. What is going on, Terry?
I don't know, but we'll make up something. I bet we can kill some time.
There's always something going on, right? There's always something going on. It's a matter of figuring out what's going on today. So I brought you on because, well, we have a lot of stuff to cover regarding just how this COVID crisis has been handled, how Fauci is kind of being exposed in a way that a lot of people may not anticipated over the last year, most specifically in the last week or so, ever since these emails have dropped. People are kind of, I don't even know if you would call it exposing, because it's just using his own words to tell on himself. But nonetheless, he is being exposed. And in addition to that, we actually had some breaking news the other day, which is there was a lawsuit done by 117 healthcare workers in Texas. And it seems like this is a pretty big deal because these are healthcare workers that are being forced to take a jab by the time, well, I think it was actually by June 7th. So now, because they were in litigation, I think they were able to kind of postpone it, but there seems to have been a result. But if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and let people know what's going on with this case, and then we'll go ahead and get you. Yeah,
that was news to me. I wish you'd kind of go into that. I hadn't heard about that yet.
Oh, we're definitely going to go into that because it's just kind of a crazy case. So let me go ahead and get this up for everybody. So,
the worst bioterrorist is nature itself.
So Texas hospital is being sued right now
at evolving microbes to create problems.
It is turning them into COVID-19 vaccine guinea pigs and breaking the law by requiring they get the shot, according to a Saturday report. The plaintiffs filed the suit against Houston Methodist Hospital on
resources
and the latest group of workers to challenge mandatory inoculations
affront or attack
at
on
essential workplaces. The
microbe of any type,
the lawsuit alleges
to use that knowledge to better prepare
vaccines violate the Nuremberg Code, which was created as a reaction to Nazi medical experiments against prisoners in concentration camps. The United States newspaper reported. Methodist Hospital is forcing its employees to be human guinea pigs as a condition for continued employment.
That we will have the evolution of a new disease naturally occurring
to subject themselves to medical experimentation as a prerequisite to feeding their families, reportedly alleged. The lawsuit also reportedly calls COVID-19 vaccines an experimental COVID-19 mRNA gene modification injection, which is inaccurate.
So instead of looking at it in two separate silos,
I mean, I feel like even the
biodefense for
CDC
biological
is pretty clear
threats that are deliberate
by all definitions
and
that this is
countermeasures for naturally occurring, you should essentially
affect your genes.
The science so that you can do both.
So it says here,
worst bioterrorist
experts blasted allegations that the vaccines are experimental, saying they've gone through rigorous testing, have been demonstrated to be overwhelmingly safe, and have no capacity to alter DNA.
What we've tried to do over the years is to use
I thought these things were certified as experimental vaccines.
To make a claim like that, just to say that that's inaccurate, and you're like, yeah, we tested it though. It's like, yeah, but you didn't even, if I recall, they didn't even test it on older people, right? They didn't test it on older people. So now, we have this situation that is occurring. I think it's specifically regarding, this is 3 hours ago. This is specifically regarding that Texas case. It says here that judge dismisses lawsuit by quote-unquote anti-vax hospital workers in Texas, calling claims false and irrelevant. So let's go ahead and just address the problem with this. The fact that they're already saying they're anti-vax, these people get vaccines all day, every day, in various capacities. And the moment that they say, we don't want to take this vaccine based off of everything that we've seen doing this job, they're now anti-vax. This is crazy, but it says that the federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit by Texas hospital employees who have refused to get vaccinated.
Instead of looking at
named Jennifer Bridges and 116 other healthcare workers had sued their employer, Houston Methodist Hospital, for requiring them to get the shot, saying that they were treating them like guinea pigs in a human experiment. On Saturday, the U.S. District Judge Lynn Hughes flatly rejected that argument.
The worst bioterrorist
Bridges dedicates the bulk of her pleadings to arguing that the currently available COVID-19 vaccines are experimental and dangerous.
What we've tried to do,
the judge wrote that this claim is false and it's also irrelevant.
expertise, the resources.
The ruling came as a relief
to allow us to respond better to
where tensions over vaccinations had reached the boiling point. Although tens of thousands of hospital employees had complied with the requirement, 178 refused.
To use
Last
that
week, the hospital suspended those workers without pay and threatened to eventually fire them. Some of the lawsuits argued would
whether
be
we will ever have
termination.
an attack
So,
on us
Terry,
in the United States or elsewhere using
they tried to go through the court system. They tried to do their due diligence, and what they got rewarded with was a slap in the face. And then a judge who, in my opinion, probably isn't a medical professional on the side, is saying that these claims are flat out wrong and false without, at least in the opinion that I've read, without actually explaining why that's the case. What do you make of this?
First off, I'm flabbergasted that anybody even knew what the Nuremberg Code was. You
I
couldn't have proved that. That was, yes. It was like, wow, okay. Well, kudos to somebody for at least having that one. No, you can't be telling people they have to do this. I am a little shaky on it. They have tested this on old people because I'm an old people they've tested it on and lived to tell a tale so far. But I'm a volunteer, and there's a big difference between volunteering for this and no, you can't keep your job if you don't. So, it's every day I'm appalled by the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter of what we got going on. Especially since it's like for the reporters that are really been following this story correctly and really watching what was going on instead of just taking what the government says and yeah, let's just go with that. There's two of them, Sam Husseini. I'll try and get this link back up. I've been following him. I have interviewed him before, and if he's got something to say, I want to hear it. Mm-hmm. And the second one is Dilyana, and she's been covering this story. And what's becoming really obvious is, if this stuff isn't illegal, why have they got all of these alibis? And hopefully we can kind of, in a few seconds here, get into, I'm showing at least 3 different lines of alibis right now, depending on which death scientist you're talking to or about. 3 different. I mean, Capone didn't do this well lawyer enough that I know of.
What Terry's referring to actually is the fact that if these vaccines, or if the vaccines are not indeed dangerous, or there's no chance of there being any danger here, coupled with the fact that they have this grasp over what is causing COVID, how it should be handled, et cetera, then why are there so many alibis out there? There's one that was built into some of the most recent legislation that says that there is no culpability amongst businesses, corporations, et cetera,
Patriot Act.
Yeah. Well, no, this is after the Patriot. I'm talking about recently. They built this into the most recent legislation, so that nobody could be sued if somebody was to get COVID, or if they forced their employee to get the vaccine, that if something happened because of that, they also couldn't be sued. And then of course we know that the pharmaceutical industry can't be sued either. And then there is
that would be 5. I'm just trying to keep count on how many layers of alibi have we got going here.
Oh yeah, they tend to stack up over time. So
let's go
ahead and check out this video from Fauci, actually kind of trying to justify why they actually have a biochemical or bio, I don't know what you want to call it, bioweapons lab. I mean, like that seems to be the most
that would be what that is. Yeah. And then, but that's such an ugly term. Let's let Dr. Fauci enlighten us. This is from 2013.
Let's let him tell y'all what it is.
2013. Weapon. He's been setting his alibi up.
Absolutely.
Hold on 1 second. The video's playing right now.
That we will have the evolution of a new disease naturally occurring that will impact society. And the reason is because history has told us that will happen. I can't predict to you when the next one will be. Hopefully it won't be for a very, very long time, but it will happen. There's no doubt it will happen. So instead of looking at it in 2 separate silos of biodefense for biological threats that are deliberate and countermeasures for naturally occurring, you should essentially pool the science so that you could do both. The worst bioterrorist is nature itself. Nature is very good at evolving microbes to create problems, much smarter than any terrorist. So what we've tried to do over the years is to use the expertise, the resources, to allow us to respond better to a deliberate affront or attack on us with a microbe of any type, engineered or what have you, to use that knowledge to better prepare us for what we know will happen. We don't know whether we will ever have an attack on us in the United States or elsewhere using biological weapons. We absolutely know that we will have the evolution of a new disease naturally occurring that will impact society. And the reason is because history has told us that that will happen. I can't predict to you when the next one will be. Hopefully it won't be for a very, very long time, but it will happen. There's no doubt it will happen. So instead of looking at it in two separate silos of biodefense for biological threats that are deliberate and countermeasures for naturally occurring, you should essentially pool the science so that you could do both. The worst.
So, to put this into context for everybody, these healthcare workers are suing because they feel like they're victims of an experimental vaccine, which by definition is experimental. I mean, by any definition of science, it's technically experimental. Regardless of whether or not you feel like it works, it is experimental. Now, couple that with why they feel like it's experimental probably has to do with the fact that they have been doing this, administering vaccines for a long time. I'm sure they worked in hospitals for a while. They understand how medicine is supposed to come about and when it is okay to be used. And now you have to deal with the fact that people kind of have this distrust, right? Because we were told that COVID, from 100% certainty, came from bat in the soup, and that there is zero chance that it could have come from a bioweapons lab. Okay, cool. So now we've had the FOIA releases that show that even Fauci believed that this came from a bioweapons lab and that it was not naturally occurring. He briefed world leaders on this, and that's why Trump believed that as well. He denied that later on, of course, called everybody crazy if you even thought that it could have originated in a lab, regardless of what the lab was, Wuhan, Kukan, I don't care where you think it is. The likelihood of it coming from a lab was almost like unanimous consent. And now he is telling you why they have the labs. So it's not like people saying they're like, oh, so you're trying to tell us that we have bioweapons research labs all over the world? I'm not telling you shit. Fauci is.
There are some reporters who are telling us this, and maybe we need to start paying more attention to them than some dingbat who's supposedly a progressive or supposedly a liberal who's denying the whole thing and is wrong every single time.
So why flip, do you think? Why flip on this so much back and forth?
We'll start with, unlike a Perry Mason movie, I wish it was, it would be so much easier as a reporter to just have him crack up on the witness stand and just fess up to the whole thing. But this is a war crime, so he's facing life in prison. Unlike the Nuremberg days, in the good old days, you got hung for this. We hung people for this.
So you think that he's trying to avoid culpability, basically?
All I can do is count how many different sets of the rats are jumping off the ship here. You can't do this. It's a war crime. That's when it comes back down to it. For some reason, we've let people slide into thinking, except for the legality of the thing. You can't say that. It's like it's a war crime. You can't just. That's not a technicality. It's not a suggestion. It's the law. We signed this treaty in 1972. Dr. Boyle is the author of it. He calls this criminal enterprise. There are 100.
Calls what a criminal enterprise?
The bioweapons industry that we have going. Colonel, when he gave advice, and we've got these links, hopefully we'll have them attached in here so you can see what we're talking about. But there is no difference between offensive and defensive. And that is part of what he was trying to cover in when he's talking about, oh, it's Mother Nature. We're not going to mess with any of that offensive, defensive. Those are ugly terms, because we're just working because Mother Nature is going to do this.
Yeah, which is like, I don't think that's what we're worried about. Because Mother Nature even only has the ability to mutate so far, you know what I'm saying,
Yes.
in a way that affects humans based off of what we know. And
600,000 today they're ringing the National Cathedral church bells, representing the 600,000 person. That's like World War II casualties, World War I casualties, and Vietnam casualties, and room for more, because we blew through that one like the Indy 500. That was months ago that we came through those three. But we are the greatest generation. We're the survivors of this biological war. Did it actually happen? That's not the point. Do I have to prove it happened at Wuhan at 743? Not the point. The point is, if you can show they've been doing this research, it's a war crime. And
if you can show they've been doing, well, not even just doing the research. Research is one thing, but when you're talking about actually moving forward and creating something, just under the guise of trying to defeat it, that's just, I mean, that's ludicrous. One, because if say it probably was like a leak. The problem was there should have never been anything to leak to begin with.
Correct, which is why there was a treaty that basically the world signed in 1972, including us.
What was the treaty?
That's bioweapons treaty, and we'll have a link to it, to the author of it, talking about why this is a criminal enterprise.
So why do you think? So why do you think that Fauci doesn't? Because obviously he's being kind of thrown under the bus by various officials now, even to some degree by the media. Obviously they're still kind of defending him, but the fact that BuzzFeed put that FOIA, the emails out from that FOIA report, it shows that there's probably a chink in the armor. And so why do you think Fauci isn't kind of rallying to defend himself by throwing other people under the bus?
That's a good question. I hadn't even thought about that yet. You would think that they would start that process here. You're supposed to get hold of one person and work your way up the conspiracy. At which point, we don't have a conspiracy theory. We have conspiracy charges. And maybe a conspiracy conviction. Who did this?
Here's what I think is going on. So I feel like when you boil it down to just what we know about our geopolitical relationship with China, I know that we pretend as like our officials kind of go on this saber rattling nonsense about economic warfare and how China's our biggest threat, et cetera, et cetera. But like we also know that the reason that China became the economic juggernaut that it is because of the West, right? We know that.
I'm pretty sure, just offhand, economic warfare is another war crime against the Nuremberg.
It is. But I'm saying I'm talking about just the back and forth between the United States and China that we are like, it's like this unspoken war that nobody wants to talk, like it clearly is though. But my point is that when we have our relationship with China is foundationalized on the fact that they have these lackadaisical policies that allow us to get away with things in China, in mainland China, that otherwise we would not be able to get away with in the United States, whether it be manufacturing laws, health and safety protocol, et cetera, ethical, moral standards that aren't necessarily being upheld there. Our capitalist society takes advantage of that. The government looks the other way, but at the end of the day, if this came into light that China's policies allow for this lab to take hold, and then the United States was experimenting there or paying for experimentation there, which has been proven. I mean, the NIH is what's funding all this shit. Okay.
Yeah, you can see the receipts. Newsweek's had that for at least 9 months.
So now you have a circumstance where, regardless of whether or not it was done on purpose or by accident, the leak happened because you all were in this relationship that was inherently unlawful and caused a global pandemic. And I think that heads can roll across the board for everybody, and that's why it's so much easier for China and the United States both to point fingers at each other rather than acknowledging like, yeah, we both messed up.
I hope they messed up. There's also a side of me that wouldn't be surprised if they didn't think this was a really brilliant plan on their part.
So I don't know.
I hope they messed up. I'll give them it would be good to give them the benefit of the doubt that it was just a regrettable error, that somebody dropped the test tube and oops. I also, these guys, this is the war industry. Killing is their business, and business is good.
Yeah, they're not working with a good. They're not working with they haven't earned the benefit of the doubt. Agent Orange, that was us. I mean, we chemical warfare and biowarfare is kind of what we do. If you're going to look at the history of the United States,
long time
for a long time, and so it's you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who understands this history that would look at Fauci and be like, yeah, you're definitely trying to prevent a disease from Mother Nature. That's definitely what this is about. It isn't about, once again, creating more that could wreak havoc across the world in any given country that you want to take over or overthrow or whatever. And so it is hard to give them the benefit of the doubt, but because we can't say with 100% certainty, which way that particular pendulum should swing, we can say that either way, the only difference, the only difference between whether or not it was on purpose or an accident at this point is, okay, was it murder or manslaughter? Either way, you're guilty.
Yes. Intent will help on sentencing, but that's about the only place, as I understand it. And I'm not a lawyer. I thank God for them, because I've got a rope. They've had me pinned up for a long time and scared the snot out of me. And I think the whole rest of the world finds out, oh, you two superpowers got together and thought this would be a good idea. Reparations. Here, let's throw that ugly word in there, because we all know reparations.
Been economically people. Most of these small businesses that are gone are never coming back because of this. The world was shut down, and then of course we know that the United States, which once again kind of removed the benefit of the doubt from them, began to use this time to increase sanctions on countries like Venezuela, Iran, and other places. You would think that if this was all accidental, they would understand, okay, hold on, maybe we should reduce sanctions or even take them away while this is going on. But it seemed like, oh, this is an opportune time to do exactly what we've been wanting to do. And so once again, we don't have any assumption that they would behave altruistically, and that this wasn't done on purpose. We can't that's why we can't rule it out, because we see how sociopathic our country can be when it comes to getting what they want.
That's also why the treaty was signed, was because it's so dangerous. These are by nature. If you nuke somebody, it's a pretty good chance you're going to know where that came from. But you can get the same casualties with this, and it's never going to be absolutely 100%, no doubt about it, this is where it came from. And that's what we're looking at right now. It doesn't make any difference if it came from France or from Bulgaria or from any of the 162 different labs that we are funding, supposedly, according to some really upfront reporting that is going on out there. Dilyana is one. Again, we'll have the link. Follow what she's saying. Says, so far, I haven't seen her get it wrong. Sam has been on this story since before it started. Follow what he's saying. He's been on it all the way through here. And part of what the problem we're running into here is the alibi. The alibi always repeats, but it comes back down to the military-industrial complex just keeps getting what they need, and we'll cover up whatever we got to cover up to get it done. They wiped out an entire school of history called the Progressive Historians. And that's a show I will hopefully be getting into. We've got a segment. I'm part of MCSC. I don't know where we've got me stashed, but we're going to start trying to get it simple enough for me to be able to put these shows together. Hopefully somebody will find it interesting. But if you destroy our history, you can get away with anything. And again, there's a link up. Look at how the comparison to the woman who did the Tulsa story, broke the Tulsa story.
Yeah, I'm going to post, after this is over, guys, I'm going to post all the links in the description so you can see what he's talking about. But yeah, there's some pretty damning evidence that history
it's almost exactly what they did. And that was to protect the war industry. The Cold War back in the 50s when they wiped out the progressive historians. And now this woman isn't going to get tenure because, well, it's divisive. We can't teach critical race there because it's divisive. History is divisive. You're going to lose that way, y'all. You cannot possibly try to make that justified. It's kind of what we're looking at, and hopefully we can do some shows looking at, well, here's some things we're going to have to take a look at, and maybe we didn't get it right.
You know what's also scary? I feel like even those who purport to be on our side, right, like our side, they will even just use that cover, right? Oh no, we're on your team, and they will still distort history in a way that you would think favors your side, but what it is really, once again, is just another cover up, but from the other angle. And so that's how, I mean, we saw a lot of people here, I feel like, throughout the pandemic kind of falling for that. I mean, I feel like I'm one of the ones who believes in science more than anybody else, because I'm like a super logical person. And whenever I would see the inconsistencies in logic, for example, whenever I would hear people say, oh, we're all about saving lives, and then ignore it, because this is before it was widely known about ivermectin. Interferon alpha 2b was literally pulling countries out the pandemic in Africa and Central and South America. I mean, months ago. Like, Cuba has had a hold over this vaccine for the last 7 months, or over this virus, excuse me, for the last 7 months. And it's because of this. And then when I hear we want people to survive, but then, you know, by the politicians and these quote unquote healthcare experts like Fauci, and then you ignore this medication that's generic, affordable, and has been tried and true and tested for generations now. It's been available since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
And suppressed even the information.
Yeah,
that it's there.
So it's hard for me to believe that when someone says they believe science, or they believe, let's look at history, and it's like, yeah, but that's not what science or history says. So where are you getting this from? And what they do, they tell you to shut up, I'm on your team, and then they just want you to stop asking questions at that. They're like, yeah, I don't care if you're on my team. Like,
divisive.
Yeah, it's like they just want to. I mean, it's top down bullshit, right? And then anytime we see that in American history, it's never been beneficial for anybody.
Except the guys that are making the big bucks off of it.
Yeah,
and we've seen who that is.
For them, for sure.
Yes, we've for sure seen who got the bucks and who lost the bucks during the last, say, year. I mean, it's clear as a bell. That is what critical race theory is, as far as I understand it. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't that starting like 40 years ago as illegal? And
the original,
the
original critical race theory was created in like the 80s, maybe late 70s, just to explain the realities of systemic racism.
Yes, just show the numbers. If the numbers show, hey, there's discrimination here, you can tell it by the numbers. And I don't have to go in and find somebody said it and take it down to on this date he said it. The numbers say they did it. As I understand it, that's what critical race theory is legal.
Now, I will say that there's been some distortion of critical race theory in some curriculums, just in the same way that identity politics have been used, and so. It's like once again, it's just an attempt to muddy the waters. So now you have all these conservatives swearing that like critical race theory is teaching white kids to hate themselves and to presume that they're racist. And that's not what the original critical race theory was.
That's not what history is. What history is this is what happened. That was history.
Yeah, but I'm just speaking specifically to critical, why there is that misunderstanding of what critical race theory is, because you have some people not teaching it correctly. Just like, some people don't understand why the Civil War was fought. Yeah, the Civil War was fought. I had to look it up. But people are not teaching the Civil War correctly, and therefore people don't understand why it was fought. But people say, oh, it wasn't fought over slavery. It's like, yes, it was. You can say, oh, well, no, it was the economy. Well, yeah, because one economy was dependent on slavery. I don't think you get it. Like, so that's
all of the work.
This
woman is the one who broke Tulsa's story loose, the Tulsa Black Wall Street story. You want to see one infuriate a liberal historian? You should have seen me in 2014 when it dawned on me. I've got a degree in history, have taught history, and I had no idea what they were talking about when I first heard somebody telling me they had airplanes bombing,
carpet bombing
in Tulsa.
First time.
Yeah, they were small airplanes back then. It was early.
This is the National Guards, though. This is the National Guard.
It's
like the first time the National Guard had ever been called in to bomb anybody, and it just happened to be a black city, and they want to tell everybody that it was done because of somebody touching somebody in the elevator. I don't believe that bullshit. That's a whole different conversation, though.
And with a degree, I didn't even know. And once again, that one took us till they wiped out progressive history. I mean, when people are confused about what does it mean to be a progressive, or is this just an empty label, well, they did that to us on purpose. And again, that'll be our first show coming up, is who murdered progressive history. If you can take out your history, you can do anything with it. You don't want people to know their history. Well, they've done a pretty good job of that. We can fix that. We can fix that fairly quickly. This internet's pretty cool sometimes.
That is for sure. That's for sure. All right, we're right about 30 minutes, Terry. Go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you on Twitter.
Twitter, it is TWBAINUSW at Twitter.
Let me go
Did
ahead
I get that
and put
right?
that in, well, the ad comes first.
Oh, okay.
We still got. We're still teaching Terry how to do this this technology thing, guys. He's pretty good though. He's pretty good. He got links down. He got links and sharing down.
Well, I was okay on radio, but then we got past the 1930s technology, and I'm just lost, man.
It's TWBAINSW.
No, TWBAINUSW.
USW. Got you.
That should do it.
Boom. Let's share that into.
And then where am I at MCSC? I'm in there somewhere, but I haven't figured out how to get to it yet.
Well, anybody can find you. If you go to Rockfin, anytime you post any content, it'll be there.
Anybody can find me except me, because I'm still struggling here.
Except for Terry. Like I said, we're still trying to get him.
But where's the...
All right,
I keep waiting for the tube.
Cool. So I posted his Twitter link in Rockfin too. Definitely check out Terry's Twitter because he's always posting new and useful tidbits about history regarding any of the major topics that we're discussing today. Terry, appreciate you coming back on once again and educating the masses.
Great to be here, and it's great to be part of MCSC. I really enjoy the work that's being done here. Hey. And I really need to get Fee, because we need a rant over this thing about we're the survivors of worse casualties than World War II. We are the greatest generation, collectively, all of us that are still alive. 600,000 less of us than a year ago here. This has got to stop, guys. We've got a treaty against this. That's not just an inconvenience, it's the law. We need Fee for that.
That's true, man. That's true. And we do gotta get Fee. You know, Fee's a hot commodity nowadays, but we're gonna get
put me in line. She rants a lot better, more interesting than mine. So we'll just get her loaded up and let her go.
All right, people, don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to share and subscribe. But more than anything else, always remember, find your balance.